Hello, 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 hello. Thank you so much for everyone who's going to be choosing to spend your Sunday afternoon with a brother. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for checking out the show and all that. So, want to get into it tonight about talking about um, a situation where this young lady absolutely goes ballistic, in my opinion, about what's going on in the modern era. So we're going to jump into it in a little bit. I do want to say hello to to a few people. I see a few people have already joined. So make sure that you say hello so that I can acknowledge your presence. I would really, really appreciate it. So tonight I was watching a video about this young lady, Dr. Dina McMillan, and thought it was what she had to say was very, very interesting. So decided to say, hey, you know what? We're going to talk about this. We're going to do a review about this. So before we get into it, I'm going to show a couple of videos, a couple of warm-up videos, because I know we got people who straggle in and all that kind of stuff. I do try to be on time and try to keep it professional and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to show a couple of videos here, and we'll get to it. So make sure that you do say hello and all that. So first one up is a brother who's going to be addressing, and this is something we talked about before. What is it that that ladies bring to the table? I wish I would have seen this last week for last week's show, but we're going to address it right here, right now. What is it that ladies bring to the table? Just kind of a warm-up video as we get to the main event for the night.
And how long you been together?
We're not dating. We're just really good friends.
How long have you been friends?
2 years now?
2 years, yeah.
So what benefits do you get from having him as a friend?
He's just a sweet guy. Like, he's just very nice. He makes sure I'm taken care of no matter what. He's just a good guy.
And what benefits do you think he gets from having you as a friend?
I don't know. What?
I don't know.
It's just a good group. Like,
To be able to be in a generation that's primarily a hookup culture, to have somebody that you can just go out with and know it's nothing but fun and just have that expectation to have fun. That's
oh,
the
I
most
like that
important
answer.
thing.
That's a really good answer.
I'd say that more than anything.
Well, let's be honest. If y'all were out right now and someone tried to snatch your purse, per se,
Oh, he'd beat him up.
Tried to.
Oh, he tried to. Oh, no. He's got my back no matter what.
so if he'd risk his life for you as a man, what do you think would be an equal benefit he would get from you?
Friendship. Like, a genuine friendship.
How old are you?
Friendship. Listen, I bring that up to say that this is still it's a struggle for ladies to understand what they are bringing to the proverbial table. I mean, we had a long discussion about it last week, and that to me was an interesting video, because the guy said that he was living they were living in a hookup culture. Now I don't know if he meant that in the sexual sense or if he was saying we just kind of hanging out. I can just go over to my boy's house, chill out with them and chill out with my girls, and we can just have a good time and we can just have conversations, and that's what he meant by hookup. I'm not exactly sure what he meant by that. But and then she said, okay, yeah, okay, I like that answer, and we can just have a good time and just have a good thing. But on the other end is what does now, and the guy posted, as you saw, posed the question to him: if a guy assaulted you, took your purse, you'd expect him to fight, chase him down the street, or whatever. Totally reasonable. Similarly, what is it that this particular young lady has to offer him that would be equivalent to that? Crickets. Can't seem to answer the question. And there's a lot of talk about this, and why guys want to get it. Should guys get into marriages, into relationships? What is being offered? All this type of stuff. And if ladies can't give an honest response to this, if they can't articulate what it is that they're going to give on par to the violence and the protection, yes, violence and protection that the guys are offering, what are we doing here, right? So I did a video about friendship and all that kind of stuff. Good evening to you, Deborah, and hello to you, Jayla. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, so this is a couple warm-up videos. We are not going to be spending a lot of time on this because I do want to get into the main video for this evening. But just a couple more warm-up videos here while more people kind of stroll in and all that. So here we go.
Blood sugar levels high.
I will just tell him not to eat sugar. If he is not having sugar, then where is the problem? Same thing with marriage. If you don't get married, where there is marriage problem? That is why my father used to tell always, no woman, no cry. So no sugar problem.
That's what not.
So no sugar, no cry. So that's his philosophy. He was obviously I just put that up there to kind of give us a good laugh about what was going on in the market there. So I mean, if you don't want any marriage problems, don't get married. Hello to you, Miles. Hello. And I do remember one time I was having a conversation with this guy I work with, and he was talking about he was really, really bashing marriage. I mean, he was bashing marriage, right? And I'm like, man, you don't ever see yourself getting married? He's like, nah. It's not really about marriage, it's about divorce. And if I don't ever want to get divorced, I can't ever get married. So I'm like, all right. So now he's married now with a kid and living a good life and all that kind of stuff. So he married a good woman too. All right, a couple more videos here, then we'll get into the main thing here. Just a couple warm-ups, and then we're going to jump into it because it is kind of a long presentation that we're going to do tonight. We're not doing no 4, 5, 6 hour streams, but
and you think to yourself, we'll be fine. And then you remember your mother-in-law came into this country illegally. And then you start to worry. What's going to happen to that woman who lives at 464 King David Street, apartment B, behind a tire shop? What would you guys do if she got deported? What will your wife do without that woman who reminds her every day that she could have done so much better than you? Oh my God, I just can't fathom it. The woman at 464 King David Street, apartment B. The gate's never locked. She's usually home after bingo. It's a red Chevy Cruze, but please, I am so concerned that our family would never be back to normal without her. The woman at 464 King David Street, apartment B. Incidents in the fridge. Please don't touch the tamales in the freezer, but sure, she has a walker, but she doesn't need it. It's just for her to get pity. Oh God,
no. I thought that was funny. This brother's, he's talking about the Trump executive orders and deportations going on. And please don't come get this please don't get my mother-in-law who's told my wife that she can do better than me at 464 King David Drive. So. And don't touch the tamales. If you go raid the house, don't touch the tamales. I thought that was funny. All right. I think this is one more video I got to show, and then we'll get to it. So.
Awesome. Good job. All right, here we go. Here's the first word.
Phenomenon.
Awesome. Good job. For our next word.
Onomatopoeia.
Nice. Told you guys she's good. She's good. For our next word.
Worcester sauce.
Yeah, that's correct. For our next word.
I
Thought you might have some trouble with that one. All right, let's keep going. How about this one?
Anachronism.
Well, good job. Next one.
Equivocate.
Well, equivocate, okay.
Sesquipedalian. Sesquipedalian.
Well, let's try one more.
Ro. I'm. Imru.
All right, here we go.
All right, that was the last video. That was the last warm-up video. So she had a problem saying I'm sorry, and that she was wrong. So, I thought that was funny. All right, let's get down to some serious business here. So this is a sister. We're gonna add this to the stage here. I'm gonna do this one here. So this is the sister on the left here is a doctor, and the other lady on the right here is a lady who I've seen a couple of times. Hold on, which way I gotta lean here? I keep leaning the wrong way here. It's not seen. Okay. So the lady on the right here is a lady, a couple of videos I watched of her before, and she seems to be very, very right, well, conservative. Let me say it like that. Not really over the top, and very conservative, and I think Christian based. And the lady on the left is Pink, who is a doctor who we're going to feature here, and her conversation is very conservative, very Christian in her presentation. So she is a social psychologist who is going to blitz everything that we got going on within society. I mean, LGBTs, the trans movement, everything else, right? And of course, feminism, masculinity. I just reached out to her on LinkedIn. I'm going to try to have her on the show, so we'll see how that goes. But regardless, I really, really appreciate the conversation, and I got about halfway through it. So we will get to it. Okay, here we go. Let me say hello to a couple more people here. Good evening to you, A Good. And yeah, that was I thought that was funny. Okay, everyone else, make sure you say hello and comment to weapons free and all that kind of stuff. So here we go. I fast forwarded to, I think, through her bio and all that kind of stuff, but the video link in the original video is in the description, so you can go over and check out the whole video. We're going to try to get through a lot of this. I am going to speed it up because they do kind of talk slow, but I think I put it on 1.75 and it should be good. If it's too fast, then let me know and I will slow it down.
Bias reduction, and gambling harm. Dr. McMillan excels at simplifying complex concepts and aligning programs with organizational and legislative goals. A globally recognized author, program architect, legal regulator, media savvy, presenter, and podcast host, Dr. McMillan's influence spans diverse domains. As a leading communications expert, she has designed and delivered innovative programs for organizations like the Tennessee Coalition for Domestic Violence, Queensland Government, New South Wales Judicial Commission, and the European Conference on Domestic Violence. Her engaging lectures, seminars, workshops, and keynote speeches, including a popular TED Talk, captivate audiences of all sizes, from intimate groups to packed auditoriums. Dr. McMillan's unique strength lies in bridging academic and legal complexities with practical, accessible solutions tailored to her audience's needs. Her meticulously crafted reference materials enhance her presentations, delivering actionable insights with clarity. Trusted and influential, she is a sought-after voice in her field. And thank you for sitting by while I read your bio. I know it's hard to have that done sometimes, but I wanted to give people a sense of you before we get into a conversation so they know who they're speaking with or listening to. And I'm really delighted to be able to speak with you today.
Is that better now, Jayla? I see you. I appreciate the feedback there. Is it better now? I hope it's better. I want to play a lot, so that's why I'm speeding it up a little bit. But I hope that's better.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this too. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there were so many things that we could have talked about, and when we were messaging prior, you mentioned just a couple of things that were kind of on your mind or have been a focus of your work, and I think we kind of zeroed in on this one, and I'll read the topic as we talked about it back and forth. Relationship difficulties for younger women. And you said, I've noted the cultural messaging directed at younger women sets them up for unhealthy relationships that don't last. They often link up with porn-addicted guys and have to deal with infidelity, laziness, a lack of emotional commitment. I was so bothered that I wrote a book to address this called Fascination with the Devil, Why Women Love Emotionally Dangerous Men. The final chapter is called Ending the Fascination and guides the reader to change her taste. And you also help with tips on how to attract and be.
I'm going to rewind a little bit in case anybody didn't catch the name of the book there. In case you want to, I may get it. If she comes on the show, then I'll definitely get it and read it. But if not, then I won't. Wait, let's see here.
Be attracted to a good man with solid values. That and your work on domestic violence, I am particularly interested. And you said, I've noted the cultural messaging directed at younger women sets them up for unhealthy relationships that don't last. They often link up with porn-addicted guys and have to deal with infidelity, laziness, a lack of emotional commitment. I was so bothered that I wrote a book to address this called Fascination with the Devil, Why Women Love Emotionally Dangerous Men. The final chapter is called Ending the Fascination and guides the reader to change her taste. And you also help with tips on how to attract and be attracted to a good man with solid values. That and your work on domestic violence, I am particularly interested in, but honestly, I'm just interested to talk to you about everything. So it's
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's really sad because it's interesting about my book, Fascination with the Devil, Why Women Love Emotionally Dangerous Men. I actually started the premise for that in graduate school. And I put it aside for a while and did other things, including coming up with the world's first and still the only domestic violence prevention program called Unmasking the Abuser. And that's the topic of my TED Talk and also my podcast. Now, I don't only deal with that because I have a show that airs live streams once a week on Daily Cloud and Rumble called Heart and Mind. And we go much broader than just about abusive relationships. But in the years intervening between first putting the research together, doing the interviews and whatever, I went back and started interviewing again. I looked at the research, updated the research, and broadened the scope because it's gotten so bad. I look at the materials that are targeted to young women and the values and beliefs and behaviors that are promoted for them do not lead to healthy, happy relationships. It's hard to find a show where if there's a female in the show where she's not exceedingly foul-mouthed, really disrespectful to any male in her, that's around her, including her boss. If she's in a relationship, they always present the woman as being smarter than the man, and the man is always apologizing. So these guys are not masculine at all.
Let me pause right there for a second. I got to break this up so that way I'm not stealing somebody else's comments. Where are they meeting them in the streets? That's where. I don't know, Miles, man. I don't know. I don't know. Gosh, now I forgot what I was going to say. What was she saying? Jeez, I forgot what I was going to say.
So these women are in this dominant position over these guys. Most women lose a.
So what she's saying is, I'm watching a show right now, and this has been going on for a long time. People think this is a new phenomenon. It's not a new phenomenon. You can look back to the shows of the 1950s, the 60s. When did the Honeymooners? Right, I used to love the Honeymooners, all those type of stuff. Right, the Flintstones, all those. There was always bumbling dudes, always. So that's why I can't really agree with that people saying this is a new phenomenon and all that. It's not really new. I mean, it's probably exaggerated now. And somebody turned me on to a show, and I tried to push through these shows because people tell me to watch them, and they can be somewhat enjoyable. So I was watching a show. I think it's called The Residence. It's like a murder mystery kind of show, and they're dragging it out. But the main character is a woman, black female woman. And the way she's just disrespectful to her bosses and the head of the FBI. She's just a Washington, D.C. cop who was investigating a murder at the White House. I'm only like in the third episode or something like that. And the way that she talks to her bosses, the head of the FBI, head of the Secret Service, and of course, as she's not going to say this, excuse me, she's going to allude to this later on. But the show, the President of the United States is a guy, but he's got a first husband. The first husband. So she's gonna go off on this. So let me just give a warning right now. If you are triggered by anything that is quote unquote woke or anything like that, and I'm not saying I'm bashing that type of stuff. I'm not saying I'm against people who have that lifestyle. You do you. I'm just telling you, this lady is gonna go in on all this stuff. So if you can't deal with that, then this might not be the episode for you. Let me just say that, because she is going to go in.
Attraction for men they can dominate. He really, and in fact, I'm even talking.
Let me rewind it a little bit here.
Beliefs and behaviors that are promoted for them do not lead to healthy, happy relationships. It's hard to find a show where if there's a female in the show where she's not exceedingly foul-mouthed, really disrespectful to any male in her that's around her, including her boss. If she's in a relationship, they always present the woman as being smarter than the man, and the man is always apologizing. So these guys are not masculine at all. So these women are in this dominant position over these guys. Most women lose attraction for men they can dominate. He really, and in fact, I'm even talking about this is a bit of an aside, but recently, over the last few days, I've seen somebody mention something and she did a video where she was talking about problems that she'd had in her marriage, that she was married for 20 years. At the end, she said they worked it out. But she was complaining about the fact that she has to coordinate everything around the family. She is a wife. Did you see it?
I saw. I think I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
She said she has 4 kids, and she said, my husband is loving and supportive, and asked, what do you need? So she told him a few simple things that she needed him to do. But she said, if I don't constantly remind him, it doesn't get done. So I have seen this a lot, where women marry men who become like their additional child.
I know it does seem like there's that mother role that she ends up fulfilling for him as well. Often.
Well, one of the things is, and I made a comment, I hope people, if they look me up on X, if you go to @Dr.Dina1, that's DRDINA1, you'll see me on X. And I said, I'll bet Charlie Kirk's wife doesn't have to deal with this. What happens is, when you have men who are constantly chastised for being masculine, for having authority, for being decisive, and instead you go for this really passive guy who's like Barney Rubble in the Flintstones, where he's always waiting for someone else to tell him what to do. Women get bored with that. We are naturally attracted to a true alpha male.
I think, I'm glad to be anxious to hear you guys' opinion. I think that what happens a lot of times in those situations is the guy gets beat down. I've tried to address this, and I think the guy gets beat down. He's tired of asking for sex. If he does anything around the house, it's not right, and he gets beat down. And the reason that he allows himself, he allows himself to get beat down because he doesn't want to lose access to his children. He doesn't want to have to move out of his home. He doesn't want to, and all the other things that we go on in this talk about divorce. He doesn't want to lose all that. You get invested, males and females, men and women get invested. Yes, absolutely. But I think that the reason that the man kind of backs down and becomes a lesser version of himself is because he doesn't want to lose all those types of things. Whereas the woman can bark up and she'll be almost rewarded for it, particularly if you had a masculine man at the beginning. He was a breadwinner. He's going to have to lose. The children are more than likely going to have to go with the woman. That's my thought process as to why you take a guy who was strong at the beginning, and then slowly 5, 6, 10 years down the road, 15 years, he's the shell of himself, because he knows he's not only emotionally invested but physically invested, and he doesn't want to lose access to his children and everything else that we're talking about. That's my thought process as to why they get beat down. And of course, as she's saying, there's less of an attraction now. Now the woman is not attracted to a guy who's beat down like that. Fight back, kick back, speak up, whatever. But this is why I think happens. So, and if that's my thought process.
And now we can have a whole conversation after this about alpha males, because what a lot of people think of as an alpha male isn't. And I actually wrote some material, very useful material, on the different types of males, and I identified a true alpha. And it's not Andrew Tate. It's like if you saw the film Gladiator, General Maximus was a true alpha male, and even playing one got him an Oscar.
I think she could have come up. Listen, I'm enjoying what she's saying, but I think she could have come up with somebody better than Maximus, because he loved his family, but he wasn't around them. I mean, we got to see this in everyday life. And yes, he stood on business, stood on his principles. And Gladiator was definitely one of my top 5 movies of all time. And if anybody's looking at that, yeah, you want to be like that. But I think that she could have picked somebody a little more a different alpha male from the choices of cinema. We'll continue on.
That's the kind of male, and I've seen it happen in real life, where women are with these weak, wimpy guys who often have a secret life that she doesn't know about. They often tend to be passive aggressive, and the women get bored, they're annoyed, and then a true alpha male comes into the room, into their environment, and in spite of themselves, they are very attracted to him. It's a biochemical reaction. So what I want is for women to start being attracted to true alpha males, but here's the caveat. You've got to be a true alpha female, which means I'm not talking about being this submissive woman who just does what she's told. I'm not talking about being somebody's servant. But an alpha male is not going to be attracted to a woman who's foul-mouthed, domineering, selfish, arrogant, entitled, all of the things that we constantly see in the media. And these women get enormous attention for it. They're the leads in shows and films. But in real life, they make terrible partners. So their relationships don't last. And I don't want that for anybody. I also, you notice I said something about you don't want some weak, wimpy, porn addicted guy either.
Now, I'm glad you brought up porn because I think that that is a huge part of the rift between men and women right now. And I'm wondering about your perspective on that and what you've researched and found about the contribution of non-monogamous behavior like pornography to the problem in relationships.
You know, in my book, something I had to add material on this because, as I said, I started it years ago, and porn has become so pervasive and normalized, and mainstream culture has become so pornified. I mean, it's very unusual to watch a show on any of the streaming services where the main characters aren't naked and humping on each other all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's one of the things that happened. If you look at research, I mean, you could go back to the research even in like the 70s and 80s. So you look at old research where they showed men over a period of a week, they get a collection of men trying to get a wide cross section. And every day they showed them Playboy magazine pictures. They didn't even get Hustler. So we're talking Playboy magazine. And before they actually experimented on them this way, and I've seen this study replicated again and again and again, before they did the experiment, they actually tested these guys and measured their attraction to their existing partners. And then after 1 week or 2 weeks, exposing them to this Playboy magazine, they measured it again. And the drop in attraction to their partner was significant.
Wow, that's really sad.
And that's only with nudity. You can imagine what pornography does. It completely ruins guys. And what happens as well is that the people who produce it want to inspire addiction. So this is where it links to my understanding of gambling harm, because that's another field where they try to get you addicted. And one of the ways they get you addicted, they know that sex with no emotional connection is empty. So it gets boring after a while. You know, you get adapt to it. At first it's enticing, but then the same thing over and over again to these strangers you have no connection with, it starts to get a little mundane. So they keep pushing the envelope further and further. And men find, because what it's doing, actually, it's conditioning. It's you're brainwashing yourself. So you're finding these pornographers are pushing the envelope further and further to more degrading, more violent acts. And after a while, that's what it takes for these guys to get aroused. So pornography, there is a really good book called Big Porn Inc. And it was edited by Melinda Tankard-Reist, R-E-I-S-T, it's Reist or Reist. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But the book is phenomenal because she gathered social scientists from the United States, from Australia, UK, and they all they take a chapter each and talk about the damage that is done by pornography. It is not harmless. It's not something everybody should do. And for men who use pornography, it can absolutely ruin their ability to have a close, loving relationship with a real person.
Yeah, I got to break this up again. So I can appreciate that. So Totally Awesome has watched this. Yes, he's no joke. I was driving and I was watching this. I'm like, oh my God, I was about to pull over. Like, this lady is definitely not a joke. And yeah, so I actually have a video that's going to be dropping about guys getting off of the corn addiction and all that. I think it's dropping this week, maybe Wednesday or Friday. So yeah, I'm addressing this. I did not know about this book and this material that she knew about, that she talked about. I wish I did. I probably would have referenced it. But yeah, it's definitely an issue. Let's see. Miles is saying sex toys are a big seller. Are men buying them? I don't know. I think ladies are because they're lonely, right? Listen, I don't know. Although they do have these different fleshlights and other kind of crazy stuff. So I don't know. Corn is destructive for men and for women. There's too much science on this. It's not harmless. Yeah, I don't think it's hard. It's hard to find the science. It's hard to find the science, although I did find some. I did not know about this material that she just referenced. But I was in Google Scholar for a little bit looking for stuff. And it's not as easy to find as that it should be, I should say. So here we go.
And for women, now women don't use pornography to the same extent, but the same thing can happen with a lot of pornified romance novels. I've noticed romance novels have become more pornified. If you watched Outlander,
I watched a couple of episodes of it.
I watched a couple episodes because when it first came out, my mother was completely addicted to romance novels. And when I actually wrote a paper years ago where I went to a used bookstore and just took a random selection of romance novels and read them. And every single one had at least one example of sexual assault or outright rape by the hero of the heroine. And in fact, when I did the paper, I redid the paper a couple of years later, and I actually went and got some stories from survivors, sexual assault survivors. And I asked the reader then, okay, tell me what this is from. Is this a recollection of a sexual assault survivor? Or is this a paragraph out of a romance novel? And often people couldn't tell.
Wow.
So I stopped watching Outlander, but I liked Outlander because it had one of the few cases of this non-hypersexual leading man. He was very respectful of her. He was a virgin when they got married. There was an incredible bond that he was never embarrassed about. I just thought it was great. And then I watched the show, and everything I was saying that keeps women from having good relationships is epitomized by the lead. She's foul-mouthed, entitled, bossy, aggressive, tells people what to do in a world that is completely different than anything she's experienced. So she acts like she knows everything all the time. And the way she curses all the time, everything, I'm just like, oh my God. And add in all the rape scenes.
Oh, wow.
I was like, almost every episode has a rape or I watched the first season. I couldn't go further than that.
What do you think that's about? That kind of a fantasy about sexual assault. What do you think women are fantasizing about or getting out of that when they're consuming that kind of material?
I feel like they're being taught that it's a natural part of sexuality. Our brain will normalize whatever we expose it to repeatedly. And I'm looking at this show with this really great characters, and all of a sudden it's turned into this thing where it's unwatchable. I just could not watch this woman. She was horrible. There was nothing not likable about her. And the fact that they constantly had rape, and then they had a whole scene that I read about because I wouldn't watch it anymore, where they're eroticizing him being raped by another man.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, what are you doing? This is aimed at women. So all of the issues, the sexuality issues that men are getting from porn, women are doing to each other through content like this. And it is just ridiculous because a lot of people are like, why are you getting so fussy? It's just fiction. Because I study the brain, because this is my job. To your brain, there is no such thing as fiction. When you have stories playing out in front of you, whether you're reading them or watching them, to your brain, it's happening in real life. To the subconscious and the unconscious parts of the brain, the parts of the brain that make so many of your life choices, especially very few people choose their mate with the neocortex, with the frontal lobe. We make our choice of partner from the emotions and the primal drives. And if you have trained that part of your brain with this horrible content, that's the kind of person you want to choose. And I was really careful. I was careful about that in the book because I said,
that's the kind of person that you're going to choose. So if you're woman, man, whatever, you're looking at this material, thinking about these different fantasies, you think that's how it's going to go, this is what you're going to want, and this is what you're going to choose, and eventually it's going to lead to some destructive behaviors. I got some more stuff coming up about our mating and dating strategies, but this is problematic. This is hijacking us all. So thank you for this, Auntie Anita. Fightingthenewdrug.org. I will definitely check it out. Go check out that website. Anybody else can go check it out as well. It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem.
I don't want people to choose a partner just using the rational problem solving part of their brain, and they're not attracted to the person. So I actually put information and exercises in there to help people retrain the emotions and subconscious to want something different.
That's really fascinating. That is really fascinating. I can see that it wouldn't make sense, like you said, just to choose on the rational basis, because then you end up with a relationship that lacks chemistry, and that intimacy is so important for pair bonding and for continued commitment and connection. And yet, if you have no rational decision making involved in it, then you're right. You're kind of these primal drives. And one of the things that I've been wondering about this quite a lot over the past several years, about where are we as Western culture with regard to sexual morality, and where are we going with it? It seems like our culture has lost any sense of valuing discipline in this.
All right, let me give another warning here. Anybody who's triggered, she is about to drop the hammer. So I just wanted to warn you.
Area of life, like it's everything goes. Don't was the Planned Parenthood thing was don't yuck somebody's yum, which is such a gross phrase to me. Yeah. Don't kink shame. Everything is an orientation. Everything is it's your right to explore, and nobody should make you feel bad about it. All kinks, all fetishes are on the table. Monogamy is oppressive. Polyamory is promoted. These kinds of things. And we've lost this idea that maybe with sex as well as with other areas of life, people benefit from some discipline, from recognizing that there are things that I want to do that I have to curtail. Like maybe I want to eat dessert all day long, but I do have to eat some healthy food and keep dessert in moderation. But with regard to sexuality, that's just out the window right now. And, how do we make sense of sexual morality in this modern culture?
We don't apologize for taking our world back. And it started with the 60s. If it feels good, do it. And people are going to be shocked. It started with this broad acceptance of homosexuality. If you look at most cultures over most periods of time, they have not accepted homosexuality, and there was a reason for that. I worked for years in the LGBT community, and people are like, well, you don't know anybody in that community. Oh, please. I worked as the agony aunt for a gay men's magazine, and I talked about relationships on a callback on a gay and lesbian radio station. I had a call-in show on a gay and lesbian radio station.
All right, let me just give another warning here. Yeah, totally awesome. You're right. She's about to go in on him. So you don't want to hear that. Ooh, she is about to drop the hammer. Miles says, as a man, there's nothing left in imagination. Speaking of physical appearance, listen, it's crazy. I don't even like click on this stuff. But the other day I was looking for videos, whatever, on IG, and I kept seeing these thirst traps. I mean, 40, are you into 50-year-old women just dropping, working out and dropping soap and not soap, but dropping stuff in stores and pretending to picking them up. And, and one lady was older, plus 45, she had some sheer pants on, bent over, and you could see little sparkles where her butthole would be. In other words, she had a plug in. I mean, this is crazy. So, and it's all over people's feeds and stuff, I was
very immersed in the community. I got to see it firsthand. So I got to see both the research, which stopped being done in around 2008, 2009. You couldn't do rigorous research on gay communities and gay relationships anymore.
Because it became politically.
It always had to be. It's just like with the whole thing about gender ideology, where they have this model where it has to be the affirmation model.
Yeah.
You had the same thing with gay relationships. And what I saw was a community full of people who had unresolved trauma and cluster B personality disorders. The vast majority of gay men were molested before they were old enough to give legal consent. Same for the women. And I'm looking at this and I'm looking at the relationships they have. And I'm looking at society. Let's just stand back objectively, though. We reproduce by having men and women have sex with each other. And because our children stay vulnerable so long, they have so many algorithms that show children do best if they have parents who are married to each other who help raise them the whole time. Having two moms and two dads does not replicate that. And so everybody's now forced to pretend. You're forced to pretend. You're forced to ignore the promiscuity and depravity that is such a huge part of life in the gay community, especially for the guys. It is unlike anything I've ever seen. And you're supposed to pretend that's okay. The women are often running from something. They're scared. It's the men and women aren't the same. It's the same with gender ideology. If you look at the type of person who is a trans-identified male, it's often more cases than not, he's a heterosexual with a fetish that he gained through porn. With the women, they're on the autism spectrum and are usually abuse survivors. So it's not the same for both sexes. And I'm not talking about I don't have an either or mindset. It's not about, we need to persecute people for being gay. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it is not the same. It is not as healthy for society as having heterosexual relationships. And we have allowed people to convince us that promiscuity, homosexuality, polyamory, all kinds of strange fetishes gained from porn, all of this is all equal. And there's just no way. And you'll notice, look at all these baby drag queens. So you have these little boys that are being brought up to do sexualized drag queen dances in rooms full of men throwing money at them.
Yeah.
And if straight guys did that, if you had a little girl doing that, everybody would be up in arms.
Yeah.
But it was like a willful blindness where anything happened with the gay community. And I run into trouble because I don't have blindness about anything. I'm looking at everything and going, this is a problem. This is disturbing. I found only a small percentage of people that I've come across that I think were actually naturally homosexual. A lot of people, it is a response to something that happened in their lives during the formative years where their sexual map was distorted by being molested by somebody.
So given that some people will be naturally homosexual, how does a healthy society navigate that? How does a healthy society support their right to live their life and love who they love while also not pretending that children raised by homosexual couples have everything that children raised by heterosexual couples have in terms of mother father, that you can take out one parent, insert new person, and have the same benefits to the child. So how do you manage that? Do you have thoughts about
it? By being really frank about it. You don't have to persecute people, but you don't pretend. What has happened is we've been so weak. We've taken the non-persecution edict and turned it into willful blindness and pretending. And then people who want everybody to allow them to just get away with everything have just said, hey, look how weak they are. We can do everything now. So you can say no. You can say that's not okay. I see this all the time. I'm so sick of people pretending. As I said, and you notice I keep bringing in things like if it feels good, do it, and the polyamory. So I'm not just picking on one thing. Sexually, once you take the emotion away from sexuality, you start to lose something very important. And here's where the vulnerability came in. In a patriarchal society, they intentionally removed that emotional bond for men. So they encouraged promiscuity for men because it meant when they married, they weren't as attached to their wives as they would be if both of them were sexually exclusive and had only been with each other. Now, I'm not saying we go to the point where everybody has to be a virgin when they get married. Again, I don't see an either or, but I also think people should be far more particular about whom they share their sexuality with. And it shouldn't be a part of every relationship. I mean, one of the things in my book, I talk about the fact, if you're getting to know somebody, see them in the daytime. Don't let them have a sexual expectation. Treat your body and your sexuality as if it's extremely valuable, because it is. And if he is what my sister would jokingly call a man-ho, he's not compatible with you because you won't be able to trust him. But, if you look at Victorian society, for instance, they were so restrictive. Or if you look at certain cultures right now, so restrictive on the women, and then the men can just do anything.
Which kind of leads you to this idea of what I think of as the sacrificial slut.
So I got to break this up again here. So I definitely, she's talking about, she does have a little bit of smoke there for the patriarchy and all that, right? Not letting the men just be able to run wild, right? Because if they do that in her frame of thinking, that they will become less likely to pair bond and less emotionally attached to their women. So, that's she's done the work on this. So I'm assuming what she's saying is correct. So she's not just someone who's just full out, patriarchy good and all this kind of stuff. So we'll continue on with it. Hello, good evening to you, Rhonda. Thanks for joining in. Appreciate it. Here we go.
It's like some women, for women who are marriageable, there's this set of expectations. But if men can be as promiscuous as they would like to be, they're doing that with someone. And so that means that there's a portion of women who are just excluded from the norms for women of their society. They're deemed something else. And so that would be kind of the sacrificial slut. These are the women who are for sex, and these are the women who are for marriage.
And everybody loses. And it's one of the reasons that women were frustrated enough that when the opportunity for the feminist movement came along, they grabbed it, because the imbalance was extreme. And of course, men recognized that if the woman was very particular with her sexuality, that her sexuality was tied into her emotions, and they wanted that, but they didn't want to give it back. And having these skewed relationships has always led to disaster, always. So you see things like, you watch any of the films, like let's take bachelor parties, for instance. Okay. Why are those okay? Where they have strippers and prostitutes, and not only are they encouraging this guy who's about to get married to cheat on his fiance, most of the guys that are there are in relationships, and they're cheating too. And women are supposed to just turn away, say boys will be boys. No, that's not it.
Aren't ladies doing this now too? Aren't they having bachelorette parties and doing the same thing? I mean, isn't that a growing phenomenon? Hello to you, Sassy Red Cutie. Hello, thanks so much. Let's see. A small portion of women, prostitutes, etc., are the sex partners of all these wild men. Yeah, that's right. And so I actually kind of understand that frustration. So if you're, now you've become the minority of women, or whatever they are, who are sleeping with all these different dudes, getting practiced on and all that. So you never can become a wife, and now you're stuck in this role that you probably don't want. And the other ladies are deemed too chaste and they want to have a good time too when they're in a relationship, but the guys don't want to treat them that way because there's this thing that goes on in men's heads that you can't treat your woman like you're like a woman in the street, and you can't look her in the eye, and this Madonna horror complex the guys got going on. So yeah, yeah. So I don't believe it's a small portion, and right, women too. I don't know how big the portion is. I don't think she's talking about modern societies. I think she's talking about more patriarchal societies, for example, maybe like in India or in China or something like that. So I'm just assuming that's what she's talking about. Here we go.
If we want a society that will be strong and healthy, we will encourage partners to bond to each other. And with regard to what I said before about the percentage of people who are naturally gay, they will have the same kind of relationships. We won't accept, rampant promiscuity and depravity from anybody. No blinders. Because we look, the more you examine, the more you realize how society loses from that.
Well, and I can see how, when you say that, it's like that the problem isn't necessarily the homosexuality. It's the behaviors that are being dismissed. It's almost like an infantilization of the gay individual in this scenario. Like, you aren't expected to have the restraint that would be expected of someone else.
But it also does change things. For instance, one thing that a lot of the trans-identifying males have tried to say is, well, if you don't want us to be in women's safe spaces, what about lesbians? I probably know more gay and lesbian people than most people because of the jobs that I've had. I have never met lesbians that go around recording people under the stalls or do creepy things in bathrooms. Never. And I mean, we're talking about 3 continents. I've never met lesbians that act like that. So it is not the same as some guy who has a fetish for being a woman and is stealing pads and tampons and is masturbating in the stall because he has a urine fetish. And these guys, a lot of them are absolutely disgusting. So no, it isn't the same at all. However, I will.
It's definitely disgusting. Make sure you hit the like button. Hit the like button.
I'll say this: if you have if you have a group that's same sex, there's something wonderful about a same sex group, whether it's male or female. There's kind of energy that goes when you're all women or you're all men, and there's an openness. But that changes if anybody in that group is sexually attracted to the people in the group. It changes the energy. You lose some of that. Some of the ease is gone. And even me saying this, a lot of your audience probably never heard anybody talk about it because you weren't allowed to.
Because you're not allowed to, yeah.
You're not allowed to admit what's.
So this is, I'll rewind a little bit here. This is the first video. Not that I intentionally tried to link it, but the first video that I showed about the guy and the girl, and they just kind of, the term they used was hookup. I just can't imagine just a group of friends just all just sleeping around with each other and thinking that's healthy. Somebody in there, his feelings is going to get hurt. There's jealousy that's going to come out. I just can't imagine that. And this is all what's going on here.
What's going on with.
Let me rewind it a little bit. Where are we at here? 33.
The group is sexually attracted to the people in the group. It changes the energy. You lose some of that. Some of the ease is gone. And even me saying this, a lot of your audience probably never heard anybody talk about it because you weren't allowed to.
Because you're not allowed to, yeah.
You're not allowed to admit what's going on with regard to homosexuality is supposed to be something that's not just accepted, but promoted. And that's ridiculous. There is a cost. There is a cost. So if somebody is naturally that way, I don't want them to be persecuted, but I don't want it to be promoted either, because society does not benefit from having a large proportion of its population, especially some of its most creative and bright, who never marry a person of the opposite sex and raise children together. So it's not something you want to promote. But you're never allowed to even look at that. And it's the same, so many things. And I know I'm shocking people because most people just never talk about it. It's like, you're not allowed to look at that. You're not allowed to say that. Right.
It's a massive taboo. And it's interesting what you were saying about, I can't remember the word you used, but the difference between basically tolerance and promotion, that jump. So I can remember a conversation I had with a friend several years back. This would be, well, maybe even close to 10 years ago. A good friend of mine was a lesbian, married and raising a child, and a very loving family, a very happy kid, nice home. I mean, this was a good family. And so that's an example that I've seen of it working pretty well under the circumstances. Of course, there's an absent person in that picture who's the father of the child who, I won't get into any more detail because these are friends, but I had a conversation with my very good friend about tolerance versus acceptance versus celebration. And she was very much on this, the tolerance was not okay. Tolerance was not an okay thing when it came to sexual identity, homosexuality, even transgender. It had to be something above tolerance, because mere tolerance is, it has implicit in it a disapproval, but an allowance for something that is disapproved. So one must have the experience of full approval of all of these other identities. And so we were having kind of a debate about that, and we had to agree to disagree. But it is interesting to me. Like, we went from, I believe, and I heard somebody talking about this recently, and I haven't checked it, but it seems right in my memory that even when Obama was campaigning the first time, he was not campaigning for approval of gay marriage. He was only saying we should allow civil unions. So this was just a few years ago, really. I mean, this is what, 18 years ago, something like that. We've gone all the way from the most progressive wing of American political society saying we should stop short of gay marriage, but allow civil unions because of these issues of like visiting a loved one in the hospital, et cetera, inheritance, things like this, all the way to we promote it in schools. Now schools push kids to be LGBTQ+. Schools are actually selling this really hard to children.
And media too.
Media too, yeah.
I was watching Glee because my nieces liked it. And I turned on the episode and they show two cheerleaders in bed kissing each other.
Oh, okay.
And I'm looking at this and going, but see, this is why I'm a little bit of a hard nut as it goes, because I'm a social psychologist. So I realize how many things that go to an extreme could have been prevented if you stopped it early. So I never would have approved civil unions for gay couples. I would have found another way to legally put somebody on a list that if something happens to you, they can be the person you call, they can be the person you inherit. I would not have done it because we didn't have enough discussion about all the implications of how that would change things for society. Because marriage has never just been about the couple themselves or their family. It's a social thing. And we never got to discuss it. By the time the marriage thing came about, there was so much censorship regarding disapproval that a lot of people did not feel free to say how they really felt. Or, I mean, I know, as again, having lived immersed in the community, I know very few couples, gay and lesbian couples, where one of the people in the couple doesn't absolutely despise the opposite sex. Now, you look at these kids that you said they had an okay family. Well, groups of women have always raised children. But if you do an algorithm on who comes out better, who comes out more healthy, who comes out the most successful, you would not find same-sex couples. And in fact, here's another separation. The data that they have on how kids do is terrible methodology.
Why is
so I'll take a little break here. So it's good that they interrupted here. Yeah, so this is, I mean, I think that she's really kind of speaking some stuff here about going in about this agendas, and you know, we've all just kind of been forced to swallow it. And you know, a lot of people were not in agreement with it. And I agree we shouldn't be persecuting them. But you know, what's going on here? And she's gonna obviously lace this and trace this into other, you know, the domino effect that's going on here. So I look for this book here, and Amazon saying it's out of print. And so I had to find another way. But What Men Don't Want Women to Know by Smith and Doe. And then Totally Awesome is asking a good question. Sure, we'll search for that book, but what are things that women don't want men to know? That's really what I want to know. What is it that you don't want us to know, right? And Miles is right there with that right there. Canceled my Netflix years ago because the alphabet community agenda. Whew. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's the agenda is everywhere. It's literally everywhere. Remember everybody's girl there, Vice President Kamala, went to Africa and told her, listen, essentially said, if you want this aid, you're gonna have to get on this agenda. They told her to go pound sand. We ain't doing that here in Africa. Y'all remember that one? I was sending you, Dr. I will attach it to an email. That's crazy. Okay, yeah, great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I just looked for it, so I couldn't find it. As a former teacher, pushing the agenda was never something I would ever do. I always recommend parents to homeschool. And listen, there's no way in the world I would send my kid to a public school today. It just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. I've already told my kids whenever I have kids, if they want to homeschool them, I will certainly help out, do what I can to do that. But there's no way I would send my kid to a public school today. I mean, between the the low graduation rates, the low reading levels, the inability to read, the agendas that are going on. I just think it's a complete mess. You can't get away from it. Yeah. Here we go. Oh, sorry.
Lesbians out front.
Oh,
because because groups of women have always raised children, there are fewer things going on, and add to the fact that with the males, not only do they not have a mother, who is the most important person for a child's early years is the mom. Dads count, absolutely dads count, but number one is mom. So you take the mom away, you're actually depriving that child of something important. And then you got to look at your friends. How many of your friends are actually attracted to kids? Nobody talks about this. And I'm not saying it's everybody, God knows, because I know so many people. I know people that scan the spectrum as far as mental health, as far as relationships, it's everything. But I am very wary of anything when you're talking about a broad social change and you're stifling people from examining it closely before they make a decision. You're telling them they're a bigot unless they celebrate this, unless they allow these people to take over their schools. That flag, I was telling people in the community about that flag from the beginning. I said, the rainbow represents, for Jews and Christians, it represents God's promise. It is a symbol you see in every kid's bedroom and on their books and everything, because it's how they learn their colors. So you're taking something that represents Judeo-Christian thought plus children and using that as your flag. It's insulting. Are you aware of how insulting this is? It's manipulative. Because kids see a rainbow and they think, oh, this is like the stuff that I have. So much. If you have something that's genuine and right, it will bear up under scrutiny. You do not need to censor people from looking at it closely. And we never got that chance. By the time any vote came about for gay marriage or whatever, and in fact, they passed the gay marriage laws in the States when the majority of Americans did not want it. They did it anyway.
It does seem like we've treated this issue like other issues that we could talk about, but this one in particular has been treated as a false dichotomy. It's like either you're all for, and then you're a good person and you're inclusive and tolerant and loving and yada yada, or you're all against and you're a bigot and you're a homophobe and all the others. So
That's
there's not that rational middle. Yeah,
No.
This is one of those places where you're blocked from having a compassionate dialogue about what's actually best for human flourishing.
Absolutely. And the use of homophobe. I don't buy into it. See, that I do have the advantage of having that doctorate. So I was like, unless you're a mental health professional, don't phobia me about anything. Because it was used to weaponize even asking questions. It was used to weaponize looking at it and going, well, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem healthy. That doesn't seem something I want to replicate in my own family. Having the parades and things called pride. Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. So everything you're doing is manipulative and negative, and nobody's supposed to notice or comment on it. We're taking our world back. And as again, I'm going to have to repeat this for the people in the back that are mad at me now. I'm not advocating persecution. But I am saying that in a healthy society, heterosexual relationships result in children for a reason. And we have such vulnerable children that it takes decades before they're able to go out on their own. So unlike animals whose children after a year are perfectly capable of surviving on their own, we need both. And it's the same thing, but it didn't start there. Again, like I said, if it feels good, do it. Also single parenthood. This advocacy of single parenthood, of having all the talk show hosts and people like, I come from a single parent family and it didn't hurt me. Oh, please. They can do an algorithm that would show how differently you turn out if you had both parents in home. I am divorced and I know it cost my daughter. I know it did. And her dad and I, when she was a kid, we worked really hard, never to say bad things about each other, not to put her in the middle. Every school holiday, they were off around the world going on a trip, and it still cost her. So one of the things I saw, because I could not stay married to him, what I said was to myself, once I became a social psychologist, I need to make marriage smarter so that people don't end up getting divorced. Because if you have children, it hurts them. Just because you can't see it or won't acknowledge it doesn't mean it's not there. So much that is negative in our society, people have been taught to pretend they don't see it. And that's another, and you notice I mentioned that I'm divorced. So I am not just pointing fingers at people. I'm looking at choices I've made and said, oh my God, that was such a bad choice. That was a mistake. And we need to do better because society, I remember when I was in grad school and you had to work as a TA, you had to be a teacher's assistant to the professors. And one of the professors asked the students, because I was at Stanford, and Stanford's the hardest university in America to get into. It's even harder to get out of if you're in grad school, believe you me. But he asked, how many people here have parents that are married to each other? All but 2 kids in a class for about 45 raised their hands.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So while people try to tell themselves, but see, again, we can't fix it if we can't look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you mitigate some of those negative impacts of not having married parents? You've got to look at it and say, okay, what can we do? And it's like the Black community. Don't get me started. I've been talking about the Black community and the toxic culture in the Black community and how we need to do something about it. But most Black people would just call me a traitor and say I have internalized white supremacy and completely ignore the fact that our outcomes are really bad. Schools in our communities are not educating our children. I see all these videos online of people taking videos of their kids being able to twerk when they're 3, but they can't read. There are so many toxic aspects of the Black community. Everybody's talking about, we deserve restitution. Here's the restitution. Find a group of us to figure out how to change the culture. We change the culture, we'll change the outcomes. But we have to.
If you haven't checked out Auntie Anita, who's in the building here, if you haven't checked out a couple of her videos talking about the toxicity, go over there and check it out. Great stuff. Great stuff.
To be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
So we have to get rid of that. One of the things that the Trump era is ushering in is fact-based analysis, even if it's uncomfortable.
Well, it's like that in an individual and in a relationship and at the larger scale too, that if there's something that you won't look at because it's uncomfortable to look at, then you're really not able to make intentional decisions around, if this is a major part of your life, you need to know what it is. Knowing what it is doesn't mean that you have to act in a certain way about it, but you have to be able to assess it and take stock of it. And that silencing of discourse, especially throughout academia, has been so shocking to me, because when my earlier experiences of college were like, you can talk about anything. It's a place for broad discussion. It's a place where you do talk. If it's an uncomfortable thing, especially go there, because that's where something interesting is. And it seems like that has completely changed. So
So let me address this thing about college, because I've really been looking into this. Yes, this lady is on Rumble. Her show is Heart and Mind on Rumble. I think she does it once a week. I did reach out to her. I reached out to her on LinkedIn. I'm going to send her a message on X as well. Dr. Dina. I'm going to play a little bit more of this. I don't like stealing all the people's content, but this is really good. What was I going to say? Something about, I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot what I was going to say. What did she say? I got to rewind this a little bit.
Throughout academia has been so shocking to me, because
yes, academia. There's an article. It's in Quillette, QUI. I think it's ELETTE or something like that. And they blame a lot of the stuff that's going on in academia on, unfortunately, the feminization of academia. So many more ladies are in there. And I've read through some of the studies about this. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you, this is what people are saying, is that, and they've done some research about this. If there's an unpopular subject, ladies are more inclined to say, don't teach it, don't talk about it, don't publish the studies, versus the men are like, let it ride. If we don't like the outcomes of the study, we don't like the results, it is what it is. But the ladies are like, no, we can't do this. People are going to get mad. People are going to they're going to want to quit the universities, where the guys think differently. So this is another erosion of the academic sphere and the academic prowess that is going on. And that's unfortunate, because the children are going to suffer. The kids are going to suffer. The kids are going to suffer. The students are going to suffer. And as this young lady said, there was, when she was in college, it was like this. But now, listen, and I teach. I'm like, listen, I'm not changing somebody's grade. They didn't do the work. I'm not changing. Oh, if you could, what can you do? No, I'm not doing anything. They didn't do the work. Other students did the work. So this is what's going on, and it's unfortunate. So, and this is some of your tax dollars. If because you're helping to pay for these big flagship universities in these states and all that. So, let's see. Agreed. We as Black people are struggling due to unhealthy family dynamics that was conditioned in our community during slavery, and unfortunately, we still haven't healed. And that's unfortunate. She's going to talk about that, and and all that. So, it's a problem. It's definitely a problem. A society big on participation awards. Absolutely. That was the beginning of it, right? Everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets a medal, and we don't want to see anybody crying on the side. No, do better. Run faster, kick the ball, shoot the ball better, practice, get in the gym. Work on if you're in a spelling bee, work on it. If you're in the choir, or you're in the band, playing the violin or playing the drums, get better. That's the answer. Everybody gets a trophy. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Because when my earlier experiences of college were like, you can talk about anything. It's a place for broad discussion. It's a place where you do talk. If it's an uncomfortable thing, especially go there, because that's where something interesting is. And it seems like that has completely changed. So the uncomfortable areas are the areas that we just create black and white thinking around, and it's all or it's nothing.
And self-assessment is discouraged. I know that in Fascination with the Devil, my book Fascination with the Devil, I did something that I rarely do. I usually don't talk about myself very much. I usually talk about the issue at hand. I don't talk about myself, but I start the book off talking about me falling in love with this absolute numpty when I knew better. So, because I didn't want the women reading it, because I actually go through mindsets you have, beliefs that you have that will set you up to get into bad relationships. And I didn't want the women reading it to feel judged, like I was coming from this place where I thought I was superior. So I absolutely laid it all out there. I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Had I lost my ever-loving mind? But we go through just a list of things, and you can take little tests on how do you feel when this happens? What do you think? Because the whole goal of the book is not to judge anybody. It's to assess what you're doing wrong, why you're not attracting and keeping those great guys, and how you can change it. So that's the kind of guy you really want. Because I'm not helping you if I help you get involved with a guy who ticks all the boxes and bores you to tears. You've got to be attracted to that. You've got to want that. You have to cherish that. So that's what I do. But
is there cherishing of the boring guy? And I know Auntie Anita again addressed this in, I think, her first toxic video. There's a lot of women out here who don't want those types of guys. He's got to be swaggerless. He's got to be. It's terrible, terrible. So, I think that this is a problem. I don't know if she can address it to any satisfactory level here. It's hard.
As I said, I entered it in there. It's like me being divorced. So when I say, and talking about Black culture, I'm a Black woman. When I say we need to assess everything and figure out where we're going right and where we're going wrong, I don't just mean other people's groups. I mean every group to which I belong as well. But I saw what happened with the LGBT community, and it was a travesty. We need to really start over there. And T doesn't belong with the rest. I don't see any benefit, and I've tried, and I've been working with the community for a long time. I don't see any benefit of transgenderism to the individual or to the broader community. I see.
So when she says, the T doesn't belong, the first person I heard say that was Dave Chappelle. The T's and the B's and the L's are all in the car. That was a classic skit. It was a classic skit. And this guy, here's a comedian giving social commentary, and here's a social psychologist backing him up on that. I'll rewind it a little bit here.
For a long time, I don't see any benefit of transgenderism to the individual or to the broader community. I've seen no benefit. It's all cost.
I saw a video today of a woman who was, she said, I'm an older lesbian, and maybe you caught this too. It kind of was big on Twitter. Yeah. And she says that the TQ plus does not belong with the LGB, and that it was really all designed to groom us into accepting pedophilia. And I wonder about that. I've heard other people make that statement. I don't see, I'm wondering if maybe if you agree with this, if you could draw that line for me, because it doesn't seem like it's necessarily, it has to follow from that. Although there are some aspects of this, like you talked about the kid drag queens, and certainly all the conversations that public schools and the media are having with little children about sex and sexuality. It seems like it kind of goes in that direction, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
It is not the T that's causing that. It is the LGB as well. Those baby drag queens are not dancing in front of transgenders. They're dancing in front of gay males. The pornography that they're putting in school libraries is gay porn. It has nothing to do with transgenderism. There is an aspect of the gay community. I mean, did you ever watch that show called Shameless? Somebody was talking about it. So I watched some episodes. It was, knowing how I think, you can imagine how painful it was. But they have a young guy on there who is gay. They show him at the age, underage, having an affair with a married man. And nobody ever says, oh my God, this is really wrong. They have him working underage again at a bar where he's getting blowjobs to the gay guys in the parking lot for money. And nobody says, oh my God, we need to call the police. That's horrible. So not disapproving is tacit approval. Now, what happened is she sees it with a T, but I see it with that whole group of letters, where what happened is people were conditioned through being called names. Just like anytime you say something about what's going on in the Black community, it's not fixing itself because you're a bigot, you're a racist, and people back down, right? They did the same thing with the gay community. So very quickly, by the early 2000s, you were not allowed to acknowledge any of the issues, social, cultural, individual, you were seeing with gay community, the advocacy of homosexuality, all of it. You were not allowed to say anything. And one of the things that has always been an aspect of it is underage boys. And it's funny because even Joe Rogan was saying, well, you know, a lot of my gay friends said that they were mentored by an older gay guy when they, and he's like nodding along with this. And I'm like, do you realize that's called grooming? I mean, you get a young guy, 12, 13 years old, 14 years old, they're excited, they're sexually excited by lawn furniture, okay? So you teach them, and of course, and Oprah even mentioned this because she was molested at 13. She said, they always tell you that you wanted it. And if they are able to get you to be aroused, then you buy that as well. And the way the brain works is it will do whatever it can to keep functioning. That's why people are like, how can someone stay in an abusive relationship and still continue? Because the brain will jump through hoops to keep functioning. So if you were molested, the chances are good a part of your brain will normalize that. That's why when they've done studies, they found more than 90% of strippers and prostitutes were molested before they were sexually mature. Their brain normalized being used, sexually used. Same thing. If you are molested, some people will repress it, some people will get angry, and some people will normalize it. That doesn't make it right. So when I was talking about people who are just born that way and the tolerance would include not preying upon underage people. We have to protect our children, regardless of your sexual orientation. And what happened is very quickly, lack of persecution of homosexuality became advocacy of homosexuality and willful blindness of all of the things that are going on in those communities that are problematic. And where sexuality is concerned in our society, just about every community is problematic. I mean, the same thing with porn. Porn's not okay. Pornifying all of our content isn't okay. Again, I've mentioned the Black community. I mean, there is a lot that's an issue in our community, but we can't fix things unless everybody knows we are going to be scrutinized. And if we want people to accept whatever we're presenting, we have to provide evidence that has to bear up under scrutiny. We can't call them names. We can't call them bigot, phobic, or anything else, you know, these weaponized words, calling people fascist and Nazi. And this is how they get people to back down and not look closely. And so, and every time that happens, the predators among the group and the predators of every race, creed, color, and sexual orientation, okay, the predators see that as an easy way to push the boundaries even further.
So one thing I'm kind of wondering with your work on domestic violence, I kind of see sort of a similar pattern happening on the broader scale with some of these movements that are emotion driven, pushing things into the black and white territory of splitting things into, if you question this, you're a bigot. And this reminds me a lot of an abusive situation within a smaller group, like a husband and wife or a couple. How in that situation, the individual who's being abused thinks that there's a way to get through to this other person. There's a way to, maybe there's a way to speak rationally and convince them to stop doing the things that they are doing that are harmful. And a lot of times that's just not possible because you're not going to get that person's permission to live normally and forego this pattern that's been developing in the relationship. And similarly, I don't think that those of us who are trying to advocate for nuanced, sober exploration of these topics are going to get the permission of the people who are shouting bigot, racist, transphobe, homophobe at us. I don't think we're going to get their permission to put this back in order in a way that, like when you said we're taking our world back, which I really like, and I'm curious about the roadmap for that. But how do we move forward? How do we discover and decide and realize that we're not going to talk sense into the radicals who are very, very loud and move forward anyway with something that puts things back in a better order for human living and families and something that resembles a functioning society?
Well, one thing, you have to develop a thick skin so you don't back down to the bullies. And one of the things, it was interesting because of the ICONS conference in July 2023 in Denver, I was invited to speak because somebody in the administration of ICONS, which is about protecting girls and women's sports, somebody watched my TED Talk and said, I see parallels between what you're talking about with regard to grooming someone to accept an abusive relationship and what's being done to our girls and young women to get them to remove all boundaries and always concede whenever a man asks for something. And they said, what we're worried about, and they went one step further, which was really clever. They said, are we conditioning these girls to be future abuse victims? And I said, yes, absolutely. Because when you teach someone this is what's been going on, as I said, since the 60s with all different types of groups. It's not just, I know we talked about LGBT, but it's not just them or only them, or they're not even the prominent ones. When you're talking about how our sexuality and our relationships and our family structure has been absolutely blown up. What they do is they get you to not question. They bully you if you say no. They teach you you're a bad person if you even ask questions.
This is what Ivy League universities you can get into with a...
Let's see. Auntie Nita said, I think the men should move us forward. However, many of them have been intoxicated by corn, and that is exactly what they wanted, to weaken the men with corn. Yes, that is the video that I did when I'm talking about that. I think that there is a sort of revolution coming. I think that the election of Trump is part of that. I think that the manosphere, the red pill movement, is going to become louder about this. I think that we are understanding now the effects of corn. I think we are understanding now the effects of dare I say it, more and more ladies who have been trying to take over. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm talking about men not in their rightful place of headship, leadership, strength. I think that the proof of that is what I talked about in the what's going on in academia. And this is not just me saying this. This is other academics seeing this. They're seeing a lessening of the quality of the academic work and rigor because we want to please everyone. So this is something that a lot of people are noticing that's going on here, and it's becoming problematic. And it's not going to stop until strong men stand up and say enough. So I think that is absolutely going to be happening, and it's on the way. And the young women of today are taught to accept sexual and physical violence because of corn. Yeah. And it's as Dr. McMillan was saying in the beginning, that this is something that is part of the agenda. Essentially, they're accepting of it. It's all in the shows. It's all over the place. It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Please consider paying for YT so you don't have the commercials. It seems like a silly interruption. Yeah. I will certainly think about that. Thank you. I should do that. From my perspective, we as women need to get back to chastity and respectfulness. I mean, how do we do that? Maybe I'll do a show about that. How exactly do we do that? How do we overcome that? In all that. So the clown administration are currently working to introduce a bill that would take away women's right to vote. They're disgusting. It's under an identity clause. I'm not aware of that. I would certainly like to look into that. I'm certainly not in favor of that. If you're a tax-paying citizen, then you ought to be able to vote. So yes, thank you so much, Gina. I will take that correction. All right, here we go.
But you get to decide whether you're going to go along with that or not. And what we have is more people now who are saying no. Again, for me, if we're going to have these different groups, I even have a program, an anti-bias program of how to get people to work together who are very different in their views. But if you have an extreme radical that it's my way or the highway, that person has to be excluded because they can't work with anybody else. Because all they know how to do is bully. I'm talking about reasonable people that say, can we agree to disagree? That you have this lifestyle, maybe, you have barbecues every weekend, or maybe you like the Dallas Cowboys and I don't, or, you have things that you do and I don't, and let's talk about other things. Let's agree to disagree. We need to get to that place, but we also need to stop allowing ourselves to be abused, because once you've seen it, once we allowed it in one area, it just kept getting progressively worse. Our family structures are being destroyed broadly across the map, because when it first started happening, people who benefited from the destruction bullied everybody else into either being quiet or telling them, convincing them you're a good person if you accept this, and say, hey, it's the same to have a single parent household as to have. So you get social points, you get virtue signaling points for advocating for this. But it was an abusive relationship. And anybody who's ever been in an abusive relationship knows you can never really win. There's always that next thing that they're going to demand. And everything they demand always gets harder and harder to concede to. It's funny because when I first did my interview with Naomi Wolf, who ended up asking me, that's how I got the show on Daily Cloud. She owns Daily Cloud, but she interviewed me, and the topic was the COVID era an abuser? So she was looking at all the things that were done to people who asked questions or had evidence that the direction we were taking wasn't the right one, how we were treated. And she saw it as abusive. And she was absolutely right. But you'll notice something. The people who conceded to that, in a lot of places, you look at Canada, you look at Australia, look at New Zealand, they have the vast majority of their population conceded to the absolute bullying maneuvers of COVID. And now they're losing everything else because the bullies realized we can just push these people and say, you're a good person if you give me what I want with no questions. So
that is an incredible analysis that I've heard other people make, is that I've heard people call it the dry run. How we're going to take over, how we can get people to follow our lead, how we can get people to do what we want. And I can't imagine that she's wrong about that. A lot of people didn't get the jab, didn't do whatever. And, that was part of the American psychology. That was part of the American culture, that we are rebellious, stand up for ourselves, land of the free, home of the brave. You're not going to just do this to us. And I applaud a lot of people who stood up and said no, when they rushed through the vaccines and all this other kind of stuff, right? So I can appreciate that. And yeah, she's right that a lot of other countries who do not have that American fortitude are now, having to be bullied again. I'm not exactly sure it's not happening under this present administration. There's a lot of things I don't like that they're doing. And I think that if people don't speak up, eventually it could come to your door. Today they're deporting people, and the whole shutting down of people who are speaking out against the situations going on in Gaza. I do pay attention to a little bit of stuff, even though I don't talk about it a lot. If people don't speak up about that, sooner or later it'll come to your door. So we gotta be very mindful about that. I saw Oprah's show about 14 years ago. The audience of about 200 men said that they were essayed in their childhood. Most of them said they were gay because of it. Yeah, listen, this is an issue, man. Yet the COVID pandemic was a test to see what they could get away with. I did not get the vaccine. Nope. The American culture has been built on bulliness. Yes, our current administration is bullying. Yeah, so we got to fight back. We had to vote. There's other ways to do it, man. And a lot of things that happen. The whole. I'm not in agreement with the whole surveillance state. I'm not in agreement with all this stuff. Then monitoring our phone calls and emails and stuff. But these politicians ram stuff through, and we haven't done enough to stop it. We have, as a collective society, we haven't done enough to stop it because we don't think about it. But they're monitoring every single text message, every single email that you all make, that I make. They're watching it. They're watching it. It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
So now that they're losing all freedom of thought, freedom of speech, they're just. They have look at the UK. UK has such a two-tiered. They actually made a law that white British people would get harsher sentences if they committed a crime than ethnic minorities.
Wow, that's insanity.
If you don't stand up to bullies, no yes is ever sufficient. It just keeps going. And once you give into it in one area, it conditions you to be like that. You've already developed the skills, the willful blindness.
It's a manipulation skill. It's the same in sales. They'll try to get you in on one little thing, knowing that if they can close that small offer, they're much more likely to close on the larger offer.
It's called foot in the door technique. And again, that's social psychology. This is one of the reasons I've said, when it comes to a lot of these things right now, one of my goals is to roll out my Unmasking the Abuser program nationally, because we talked about this before the show, that no one, Democrat or Republican, has ever reduced the risk for women about getting involved in an abusive relationship. And the risk for men is actually increasing. But it's still nowhere near as high as it is for women. For women, it's approximately 25%. And in states like Oklahoma, it's 49.1%.
Oh my gosh, wow.
I have a program that I've actually tested out, that's well-researched, that actually works without turning you into somebody that thinks everybody's trying to abuse you. It's not anti-male, because a lot of times when you have things that are supposed to protect women, they think we can protect women by being hateful towards men. No, it's not going to get you to be hateful towards men, but it will show you manipulation tactics. And once you know those, You can spot them, whether the person is coming at you romantically, whether it's a workplace, whether it's a social movement, whether it's a government ideology. You can spot these tactics because there aren't that many of them. I've been able to teach this program to 13-year-olds. And one of the 13-year-olds that I taught, she was really interesting because I had a seminar, a workshop called Protect Your Daughters. Somebody always says, oh, you need to teach this to kids. Well, kids don't necessarily have the mind skills, the flexibility. They still have black and white thinking. They don't have the executive thinking that comes later. I said, sure, I'm willing to teach kids 13 and above, but they have to bring every generation of women in their family. So it was women only. Because if you're not all on the same page, so many women have come to me and said, we took your training, we know how to spot the bad guys, but everybody in my family, all my girlfriends are trying to encourage me to go with this guy saying I'm too picky because they don't get what I'm picking up because you taught me this. So I want to get this out there because we spend over $9 billion a year in direct costs for domestic violence. And while the Department of Government Efficiency is trying to save money, here's a way to save money, save lives, save the next generation. And 13-year-olds, now this 13-year-old that she came under duress. And initially she sat there with her arms crossed and with teenager face, the eyes kind of like this.
Yeah.
By halfway through, she was sitting up straight. By 3/4 of the way through, she was leaning forward. And she wrote, by the time I got home, I checked my email. She had already written an extremely supportive and emotional email about, she was furious. Why hasn't anyone taught us this before? And she CC'd the mayor.
Wow.
And the mayor said, we're going to give you more funding to do more training. So what I'm talking, because, they say, they accredit it to Einstein, whether he said it or not, that if you can't explain it simply, you don't know it well enough. So I've been able to identify the specific tactics. We talked about the foot in the door technique. If you can get somebody to make a small concession, you can get a larger one. I took the specific tactics used by abusive partners in order to lure people in and trap them in a relationship and made it easy to understand all different ways to understand so that people can spot this early and not get involved because these guys move fast. And once you get involved with them, they know all sorts of psychological tricks to keep you from walking away. So I want people to be able to spot this early. Or if you are in a relationship, I've had a lot of people come to me and say, I read your book, but he says he loves me. And I realized I was right. Because my husband didn't hit me, I didn't know I was in an abusive relationship. But reading your book, I actually saw exactly what was going on. So, and again, I'm not trying my to break up people's marriages. It's to get people to have loving, mutually respectful, healthy relationships. But we need right now in the US, we need a win where women are concerned. Because the biggest criticism I get from anti-Trumpers is that the Trump administration isn't doing enough to help women. Well, here's something to help women that nobody else has ever dared to do. Let's lower the risk of women getting trapped in abusive relationships without turning them into misandrists where they hate men.
I think that seems like an incredibly valuable training to offer. And you're touching on something that's so important there because there's such suspicion between women and men right now. You see it online. I don't know how bad it is in person, but I suspect it's quite bad. There is a pretty good portion of women and a pretty good portion of men who've just been turned away from each other. And so getting something that can help people to maximize their chances of having successful relationships and also teach them how to conduct themselves so that they are someone that can offer a good relationship to another person, both women and men. As you kind of talked about those media archetypes of this rough, tough girl who's really domineering. And I've seen that too. And I thought it's almost as if we're going to use all of the male stereotypes for personality, but we're going to package them in a sexy woman's body. And that's the emblem of femininity that we're being presented from.
Let me interrupt that for a second here. I talked about a show that I watched. Speaking of this, because this really bothers me. Show's called it's on Netflix. What is it? The Diplomat. Good show. I mean, besides all this craziness that's going on here, this the rough, tough woman in the feminine presenting body, and I talked about the first episode. It's 2 seasons. First season, I think I counted the number of times. I was gonna do an episode about it, but I'm like, let me not pick on the show. They did like 3 or 4 different episodes. The guy kept referring to, in one episode, he referred to himself like 3 times in the episode. Listen, don't talk to me. I'm the wife. I'm the wife. This is obviously written. The actor is saying it, written in the show that he is the wife. Second season, they're doing this. They're doing the same thing, calling themselves the wives. It's crazy to me. And listen, besides this nonsense, it's a good show. I like the political drama and all that. But this whole masculine presenting thing and the feminine form, Crazy. The straight man is the most hated. A straight black man, even more so. Oh, we know what it is, Miles. We know what it is, man. We know what it is. We know what it is. It's horrible. It's horrible. From my perspective, the government needs to mandate a minimum 1 year of professional couple counseling before receiving. I actually agree with that. I don't know about a year, but maybe 6 months. I mean, I actually, it's too easy to get into these relationships. Not only the counseling about how you're going to deal with stuff, but I think everything that it takes to get out of a marriage, everything that they want to know to get out of it, the finances, bring your finances, bring a coupling certificate. You should have to bring all that type of stuff. You want to talk about all the stuff when we get out of the marriage, who's going to deal with the kids and all, you ought to bring that before the marriage. Here's how we're going to deal with kids. It ought to be a pre-contract to me. That's my philosophy. But have you seen the latest movie trailer G20 with Viola Davis as the female president, who is also the action hero of the movie? I'm sick of it. The feminist. I did see that. I was nauseated by it. And listen, I like Viola Davis, but her last two movies, well, I don't even know it was the last one, but not the Lion King, The Woman King, and this one. Come on. Right? And the husband's tied up, and I can't do anything. And I like Anthony Anderson. Listen, if you're a man, if you're a man and actor, how can you sign up for that? Say what you want about Anthony Mackie and his conversation about the masculinity thing, man. But yeah, no, I definitely saw that, and I was nauseated by it. Like, what is this? Crazy. Hello, there is definitely an erasure of heterosexuality going on here. Most individuals need 10 years, probably right. Parent and educated fact. I said the same thing. Yeah. Okay, we'll finish this out here.
The entertainment industry so often. And the same for men. They've been really, like you said, there's this real push against masculinity, which means that men feel diminished and they feel like they're not respected and not wanted. And that's a huge problem too, because then they don't get a healthy role model for what does strong masculine behavior really look like.
Mm-hmm. Well, also too, in my book and in my work, one of the things I talk about is that, it takes a long time to braid my hair like this. Okay. So I spend a lot of time in the hair shop. Okay. And even before I got braids, when you go to the hair shop, it takes a while. Mm-hmm. And I noticed over the years that women could play out and would talk in detail about every wrong thing their current or former partner did, mm-hmm. but nobody ever talked about what they did wrong. Mm-hmm. So in my work and in my book, I talk about here's some mindsets you can have. Here's some things that you can do that will actually cause a problem in your relationship. Here's an easy way of changing that, mm-hmm. because it's not one-sided. If you're going to get this fantastic partner, you need to be a fantastic partner, or anybody with confidence will walk away. So everybody wins when we have stronger relationships and stronger families, which is why I had a job in the LGBT community. I was like, everybody needs a healthy relationship. If you're going to be in a relationship, it needs to be healthy. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems of everybody just putting an okay on everything you do is that when you're doing really bad things that are self-destructive and others destructive, nobody tells you. Mm-hmm. How are you going to have a healthy relationship that way? Mm-hmm. So, and again, but we can fix this. I never talk about a problem without also offering a realistic solution. Mm-hmm. We can fix a lot of this, and it's not even that hard. The fact that I can teach my Unmasking the Abuser program to 13-year-olds tells you it's not that complicated. Mm-hmm. But you have to learn it, and you have to pay attention when you see it. Don't talk yourself out of it. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I encourage too is groups of people learn the information, and mm-hmm. every time you meet somebody new, talk about the new person, because when you're attracted to someone, you may be willing to overlook things mm-hmm. that may be a serious problem. And that's also why I wrote an ebook called Simple. It's just an overview mm-hmm. of abusers, a brief overview of abusers' strategies and tactics. Mm-hmm. All this stuff's on my website. You can find it. But it's a $10 book mm-hmm. that describes how they trick you into getting involved with them, all the little tricks they use at the very beginning to lure you in. And then it gives you the definition mm-hmm. of all the different tactics, so that you can have it on hand. So you meet somebody, you go out on a date, you're like, did I see any of this? You can just go to the ebook. And I would suggest printing it out, because our brain actually processes information differently when we see it online versus when we actually have it physically.
In print, yeah.
In print, printed material actually counts. So I would suggest printing it out. It's less than 60 pages. I made it short. Mm-hmm. But you look it up and you say, okay, did I see any of this? Mm-hmm. And you don't lie to yourself. You tell yourself, I'm not going to lie to myself. And if you do see something, you don't necessarily say, I'm never going to talk to this guy. And you just investigate a little further. Mm-hmm. And I would also suggest not collapsing yourself into a relationship until you get to know who you're dealing with. So many women are willing to get so involved. They meet a guy they're attracted to. That, I have a friend. Oh, I was in love. He came to visit me, and we met online, and he came to see me, and I was in love before his luggage came down. I'm like, oh my God. I have one friend that has the worst taste of anybody I've ever met in my whole life. So she's like my really bad example.
Yeah.
But remain wary until you know who you're dealing with. But also, fix yourself. Here's some advice. While you're waiting to meet the ideal partner, do as much as you can on yourself. So that you're just like an amazing, because the best thing to be is a hard act to follow.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's fantastic advice. I'd love to get into the concrete ideas that you present if you ever want to share them. I know it's kind of it's your practical material, and it's the way
out in the world.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'd love that if you want to maybe have a part 2 discussion and get into some of those specifics, because I'm really eager to hear.
Because the brief overview was designed to be short, as I said, it's less than 60 pages and it has pictures on every page. I've designed this to be like a magazine article.
Oh, it sounds fun to read too.
We can actually go through it, and I can show you things like very helpful, how a guy who wants to get involved with you and you're not attracted to him, he'll start doing things for you when he knows you're overwhelmed to try to worm his way into your life. And I can show you the different things. We can just go through it and we can have a lot of fun with it.
All right, that's it. We'll stop there. Harry helpful. That's pretty funny. So listen, hit the like button on this video. Go over to her channel. It's on the Radical Center. It's only got 2.1K views. She's 23,000 subs. Make sure you hit the like button over there. And, I really appreciate it. I did reach out to her. Hopefully I can have her, Dr. Dina, on this show before she goes back for that round 2 on over there. But that's that. So I'm also going to try to check out her podcast on Rumble. I have not watched Adolescence. I've been hearing everybody talk about it. I will definitely try to give it a watch. I've been so busy. I'm actually very, very tired right now. I had a lot of work to do over the weekend. So, but I will try to get to it, and I know I got to be up for it because I don't want to be falling asleep on it. So I thank you all for checking out the show for tonight. I think it was great that the commentary going on in the chat. Thank you so much for checking it out. That's it, man. I really, really appreciate everyone who chimed in. Great show. It was a great conversation, and she really pulled no punches. She came for everybody. So when I first heard it, I was falling out of my chair. I'm like, what the heck? This lady is not holding back, and it's as she said, or she alluded to, that it's unusual. You don't hear anybody talking like this, right? So, yeah. Oh, listen, you can't. I mean, I appreciate it, but it was those 2 ladies up there who held it down. Particularly Dr. Dina. She was definitely awesome and no filter. So do not piss her off, because she will come with both barrels and let you know. So, and I can appreciate the work that she's doing as far as helping the ladies not to and being in law enforcement all the time, right? I can't tell you, right? We had all these different lethality assessments, right? We had to analyze how many times we had gone to people's houses, and if we didn't ask a certain level or a certain amount of questions, and they had these different questions we had to ask people, making it more complex on our part to do our investigation, because if we're sitting there asking questions, we can't go get the guy who assaulted or whatever. The research was that if they answer, let's just say it's 10 questions, they answer 7 of them, then the statistics will say that she is likely to be deleted later on in life. So that's why we're asking questions and doing all the research. But if we can get ladies to understand that here's some different things, these hairy helpfuls or whatever she called it, to get to ease into your life, you can recognize that, particularly as a young girl, 13 years old, and she can save herself a lot of headache later on. And I'm quite sure that some of the older ladies too can recognize, hey, I allow guys to do this. I did this. That's another problem I had with the whole friendship conversation or friend zone conversation, right? These guys have a romantic interest in you. You know that they do, and yet you allow them to come into your life, move furniture, hang sheetrock, cut your lawn, fix your car, whatever they're doing, and then when they want some type of romantic reciprocation, then you're acting surprised and angry and all this kind of stuff. And then there was a I saw a video the other day. Maybe I can put it on here one day. Instagram. This lady was talking about how she was never going to give a friend zone guy a chance again because he was out of her league. She made it seem as if he wasn't worthy of her and this, that, and the other. So she gets with the guy, has they end up doing the do, then the guy ghosts her. And he had been stalking her for I think like 5 or 10 years. I can't remember. 5 or 10 years. He's in her life trying to do whatever. Didn't get the attention that, and when she finally said, "Okay, I'll give him some attention," sleeps with her and then ghosts her. You got to do better with your selection. So, yeah. So that's it. Hit the like button on your way out. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined in. And if you're going to watch in the future, please make sure you hit the like button. And again, if you're going to watch in the future, make sure that you go over to their channel there and give her a like because they did all the work. And if you would feel so inclined, if you wouldn't mind, you can always buy me some cookies, cakes, or lunch. I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Pastor Lynn. Thank you so much to Rhonda. Everybody have a great week. I might do another live this week sometime because there's a couple of shows that I really, really want to review. I don't like stealing all people's content, but this was really, really good that she put up there. Yeah, I gotta thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Miles. Thank you so much. I will certainly get some rest. You guys have a great night. Good night, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Much love and peace.